Don't lose yourself, even if you lose the world, Buddha. One of the passages we often chant together is, "I will grow different, separate from all that is dear and appealing to me." It's a reflection on separation, inconstancy, but not just inconstancy outside. It also covers inconstancy inside. Notice that it starts, "I will grow different." This is something we have to watch out for, the fact that the mind is so changeable. When things that we've been dependent on, things that we're attached to, suddenly stop, when conditions change, how much are we going to change? Do we have the stability inside that even when things start falling apart, outside or in, our virtue doesn't fall apart, our concentration, discernment, the things that are really important, stay solid? In the beginning, we have to go on conviction that what the Buddha said is true, that if you lose your wealth, if you lose your health, even if you lose your relatives, it's not that serious a loss. The serious loss is when you lose your virtue or your right view. The things of the world, the people of the world, are all subject to aging, illness, and death. These losses will happen no matter what you do, but you can keep yourself from losing your virtue or right view. Unchanged by loss. There's that passage where King Pasenadi has come to see the Buddha, and as he's talking with the Buddha, one of his men comes up and whispers into his ear that Queen Malika has died. Queen Malika was his favorite queen. He breaks down and cries. The Buddha's first comment is, "When has it ever been the case that something that was born would not age, grow ill, and die?" The fact that these things are universal is actually comforting. It's not just your individual pain, your individual loss. You're not being singled out for unfair suffering. Everybody suffers this. Then the Buddha tells the king that we should express our grief to whatever extent we find useful, but then we have to realize that we've got to get on with life. There's work to be done both outside and especially inside. As long as grief is in charge, it can very easily cause you to do things that would go against the precepts, or you might even change your views. But if you have something solid inside, then you're more resistant. And that solidity, as I said, starts with conviction that what the Buddha said is true. Our only real possessions are our actions, so we have to be very careful with them. Right view reminds us that our actions are important, and virtue gives us some guidance as to what's skillful and what's not. The precepts are there as shortcut guides, quick notes in the mind. No killing, no stealing, no illicit sex, no lying, no intoxicants, ever. Because they're most needed when the mind is overcome with emotion. And when the mind is overcome by emotion, it's very easy to forget. If the precepts were complicated, with lots of exceptions, the mind would certainly find a way to take advantage of the exceptions. When you're in shock, you need something that's quick and short to remind you that, no matter what, you're not going to do X. But just having conviction is not enough. You've got to get to work. And it's interesting that those two qualities that the Buddha said are most important to protect, your virtue and your right view, are also the qualities he said form the basis for right mindfulness. Right mindfulness, of course, is a series of instructions on how to get the mind into right concentration. You need something inside that's solid, so that you're not tempted to give up on your virtue, give up on your right view when things outside suddenly change, and conditions are a lot less comfortable than they were. So we work on the concentration, work on getting the mind to settle in. We've got to be friends with our breath. This friendship is something that can outlast all the other friendships outside. If you have trouble being friends with your breath, you've got to ask why. What is it about the breath that's so hard to stay with? Sometimes a lot of associations we have inside the body, there's a pain from this event and a memory from that, seem to be buried in the energy body that we're working with as we play with the breath. This is where you have to use some analogies to help. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha gives so many analogies. They're perceptions you can use to start shaping your mind in a new way. He says to make your mind like earth. People throw nice things on the earth. People throw disgusting things on the earth, but the earth doesn't react. Hold that image in mind and remind yourself that whatever comes your way, you can stand it. Aging comes, you can stand it. Illness comes, you can stand it. Even when death comes, the Buddha says, you can stand it. You're going to be losing all kinds of things, but you can remind yourself there's an awareness in here that's going to keep going. It's not going to be destroyed. The more solid it is, the more confident it is, the more likely it is to go to a good place. That perception helps you stick with that conviction, and strengthened conviction makes it easier and easier to get the mind into concentration. It helps you develop that earth-like quality of being solid in the mind, so that whatever comes up as you work through energy knots in the body, you're not going to be knocked around by it. So, this principle of trying to make sure that you don't change for the worse when outside conditions change for the worse also means that there has to be a part of the mind that doesn't change when inside conditions change or start revealing themselves. You begin to realize that the changes outside are not nearly as worrisome as the changes inside. One change inside, when the mind suddenly changes direction and gives up on the practice. That's the biggest thing to fear. That's the kind of change you've got to watch out for. Some people say that the Buddha teaches us to embrace change, but that's not the case. Some changes are good. When you change for the better, that's certainly fine. But you want to have something inside the mind that doesn't change for the worse when outside things change for the worse. And this is what we're working on as we practice. So, look for that something inside. It's going to be very close to the breath, which is one of the reasons why you work with the breath as much as you can. Or, if you have trouble working with the breath, try to develop qualities of mind through other meditation topics that will give you some of that solidity. Think of all the topics the Buddha taught to Rahula, one of them being the reflection on keeping your mind like earth. Other topics include the Brahmaviharas, spreading goodwill for all the people who've harmed you, spreading goodwill for all the people you've harmed, spreading goodwill for yourself, reflecting on impermanence, the inconstancy of things, reflecting on not self, all of the things inside and out that are beyond your control. Then, as the mind begins to accept these truths, it develops a greater solidity inside. At the same time, when other issues come up to distract you, you have these quick ways of dealing with them. The face of someone who's harmed you comes up in the meditation. Spread goodwill. Try to make it quick so that you can get back to the breath quickly. The thought of someone you've lost or something that you've lost. Reflect on impermanence and inconstancy. These things are all made to be lost. Think of Ajahn Chah's analogy, to think of the cup as already broken. This doesn't mean that you treat it casually. You actually take very good care of it, but part of the mind has to be prepared that someday it's going to break. The Buddha compares people to pots. As he says, all pots get broken eventually. Whether it takes a long or a short time, they're all heading to be broken. In the same way, people are all headed to being broken. The world is broken. It's never going to be perfect. If you can accept that, then you can live with it and do what you can to make it a little bit better. But particularly, do what you can to make yourself better, make yourself more reliable, so that the changes of the world don't lead to changes inside, at least not to the deterioration of anything good inside. When you can maintain this kind of solidity, then change doesn't hold any fear, loss doesn't hold any fear, because you've already gathered your good things inside where they're safe. Loss. One of the things you notice as you practice is how many selves you have. Often you have more than you notice. For every desire you take on, there's going to be the sense of what you can do to bring that desire about, what powers you have under your control, and then the sense of you as the person who's going to experience the happiness that will come when the desire is fulfilled. As the Buddha said, this desire or craving is the water that nourishes our sense of self. It's what provides the location around which each sense of self develops. That holds true for every desire we have. Sometimes we have a desire for food, sometimes for shelter, for friends, for relationships, for all kinds of things, and we have a sense of self for each of those desires. Especially when we suffer loss of someone or something we thought we had, something we did have for a while but wasn't really as much ours as we thought it was. It's not just the loss of that thing or that relationship. There's a strong sense that we've lost part of ourself, one of ourselves. This is very central to the Buddha's teachings on suffering. It's one of the main causes for suffering, and it goes deep. Once King Pasenadi was talking to the Buddha, and one of the aides from the palace came to him and whispered in his ear, saying that Queen Malika had just died. The king broke down and cried, so the Buddha said to him, "Did you ever think that she would live forever? How can we have it in this world that the things and people we love don't pass away?" But then he goes on to say to the king, "As long as you feel that there's a value in giving expression to your grief, go ahead. But there will come a point when you realize it's self-indulgence. At that point," he added, "you have to realize that there are other desires, other duties you have in life, and you can't abandon those just to keep on giving expression to your grief. In other words, there are other parts of yourself or other selves that have to keep functioning." That's where his first comment comes in, to remind the king that loss is not happening just to him. It's universal. This is one of the bizarre things about grief. You would think that thinking of the grief experienced by everybody in the world would make your own grief even heavier, but it doesn't. It actually takes a lot of the sting out as you realize, it's not just me. This is built into the way things are. The reflection we often recite, "I will grow different, separate from all that is dear and appealing to me." That's actually only part of the reflection given in the canon. That part of the reflection is for the purpose of inspiring a sense of heedfulness, reminding you that you have to be skillful in what you do and in the desires you foster, choosing which ones to foster and which ones to put aside so as not to put yourself in danger. But then, the Buddha encourages you to go on and remind yourself that it's not just you, it's everyone, man, woman, and child, layperson and ordained, now, in the past, and in the future. Everyone is going to grow different, separate from all that is dear and appealing to them. As the Buddha said, that inspires in you a different motivation, the motivation to get on the path. In other words, you develop a new self, a self that really does want to find a way out of all this turmoil, all this repeated suffering. The emotion here is samvega, the sense of terror over unending rebirth and redeath, and a sense of urgency in finding a way out. In another context, he calls this sense of urgency renunciate grief, as opposed to householder grief. Householder grief is when you don't get what you want in terms of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and ideas. That sounds pretty abstract, but it actually includes all our relationships and dealings with the world as a whole. After all, that's what the world is. The range of experience through the six senses. And the skillful cure for that grief, the Buddha says, is not trying to find householder happiness in the senses. It's to conceive a different kind of desire, the desire to find a true happiness inside that's not going to leave you, that's not going to change. The realization that you haven't got there yet, he calls that renunciate grief. Now, renunciate grief is good because it's what gets you on the path. Trying to find an escape from householder grief by searching for householder joy ends up in nothing but repeated disappointment. If you gain a little householder joy, its causes will have to change, and then you're back with householder grief again. What you want is a dependable joy, which is what renunciate joy can provide. But the quest for renunciate joy starts with renunciate grief, realizing that there is a goal that can be attained and you haven't gotten there yet. That grief has to be encouraged and accompanied by pasada, confidence that there is a way out, that you can find that way out, and that you have what it takes to go all the way. In other words, you take the conceit that lies at the center of grief and you point it in a new direction. There's a story where Ven Sariputta's talking about how he'd reflected one day after meditating, is there anything in the world that, in changing, would cause grief to arise in my mind? And the response was, no, there's nothing. Then, Ananda, who was listening in, immediately asked, well, what if the Buddha passed away? Wouldn't you feel grief then? Sariputta said no. He'd reflect that it's a sad thing that someone who was so useful for the world had to pass away, but it wouldn't cause any disturbance in his mind. And Ananda's reaction was interesting. He said, it's a sign that you have no more conceit, because that, essentially, is what the grief is. It's a wound to your sense of self, or one of your senses of self. But the cure is not to abandon conceit entirely. You can't do that right away, for you'd have no sense of self to support your practice. So you turn your conceit into renunciate conceit, reflecting that other people have found a way out, and many of them started out in situations worse than yours in terms of their strengths, their weaknesses, their inner and outer qualities. But they were able to find their way out. They could do it, so can you. You take that conceit and you put it to a good purpose. You create another sense of self, a sense of self that aims at true happiness. This is a sense of self you want to encourage and nourish. You develop a sense of responsibility, a sense of confidence and purpose. You can begin to marshal all your different senses of self in this direction, because it's not the case that once you're on the path, you'll have only one desire. We live in a world. We have to deal with people. We have to deal with situations. We've got bodies we have to care for. We're social animals, so there are going to be other desires as well. But you have to learn how to marshal them and really look at them. Which desires are pulling you away from true happiness, and which ones are actually helpful, or at the very least not obstacles on the path. That right there involves a kind of shedding the desires that pull you away, and shedding the selves that go along with them. This is why it's sometimes very difficult, because we have a strong identification with certain desires, certain aspirations, certain aims. You have to reflect. If we don't let go of these things now, no matter how much we like them, no matter how intimate they are, if we don't let go of them now while we're focused and mindful, the day will come when they'll be pulled away from us when we're in no shape to let go of them at all. It's going to be as if part of you has been ripped out of you. So you reflect on the fact that everybody has to do this. It's not just you. And that allows you to look at the whole issue of where you're looking for happiness from a broader perspective. The broader perspective helps to take a lot of the sting away. Wherever there's loss in life, you have to reflect that the important things have not been lost. The story of Ananda and Sariputta continued, and it turned out that Sariputta ended up dying before the Buddha. For some reason, there's a Mahayana version of the story in which the Buddha says he lost his sense of the directions. He was so upset that he'd lost Sariputta and Moggallana. But that's really an insult to the Buddha. It's pandering to people's ideas of the importance of their emotions to slander and betray the Buddha in that way. The actual story is that Ananda was the one who was upset when he heard of Sariputta's death. He went to see the Buddha and complained that he had lost his sense of the directions when he learned that Sariputta had died. And the Buddha said, well, did Sariputta take virtue away with him? Did he take concentration away? Did he take discernment away? Did he take release away? No. All the important things in life were still there. The important possibilities, the important opportunities were still there. And the Buddha continued, did I ever tell you that anything born will never leave you? Things that are born, things that age, things that grow ill? Do you think they'll never leave you?" And Ananda had to say, "No. But there is one thing in life that will never leave you, and that's release." I've told you many times that story of Ajahn Suwat, but it bears retelling. It was my last visit to him before he passed away. He had suffered brain damage in an accident, and he said, "You know, my brain is telling me all kinds of weird things. All kinds of weird perceptions are coming up." At the very least, he had the mindfulness to recognize that they were weird. And then he added, "But that thing I got from my meditation, that hasn't left." That's something you can depend upon. It's the only thing you can really depend on, so you want to develop the desire to find it, nourish that desire, and nourish whatever sense of self is skillful in pursuing that desire. Ultimately, you'll have to let that self go too, but in the meantime, it's going to get you where you want to go. Like the raft across the river, once you've crossed the river, you're not going to need the raft anymore. Everybody knows that part of the story, but people tend to forget that while you're crossing the river, you're going to need the raft, and you want a raft that, even though it won't last forever, will last long enough to get you safely to the other side. You're going to need to hold on to everything from right view on through right concentration. All these things require a sense of self that's strong, competent, willing to learn from mistakes, focused on doing what's skillful, learning to recognize what's not, admitting when you've made a mistake, and wanting to learn from it so your skills can grow more solid. That may seem like a faraway goal. That's renunciate grief, realizing that this takes time and energy, but it's time and energy well spent. When you think of all the time and energy that has been wasted in your life and your many lifetimes, it shouldn't seem too much to put energy into this goal that doesn't lead to disappointment, doesn't lead to loss. It's the one thing that, when you attain it and you have to let go of the sense of self that got you there, you don't let go of it with regret. You let go with appreciation and joy. The 4 frames of reference. When people first come here to stay for a period of meditation, it's important to keep the 4 frames of reference in mind as a way of getting the mind into seclusion. But it's also interesting to note that when the Buddha gave parting instructions to his monks, one of his themes was to stay with the 4 frames of reference. The teaching is the same, but it serves different functions when you're coming and when you're going. When you're coming, you come from being involved with other people. Physically, you've been around other people, near them. You interact with them, and mentally you're entangled with them. When you come out to meditate, it's important that you come out not only for physical seclusion, but also for mental seclusion, to start untangling some of those tangles in your mind. The Buddha's recommendation is to just be with the body in and of itself, to be with feelings in and of themselves. In other words, instead of putting a lot of interpretation on the top, thinking about past, thinking about future, what you've left or where you're going after you leave here, you just sit here with what you've got. This is his interpretation of mental seclusion. You're just one with the present moment, and you're not two with the past or two with the future. And usually it's not just two. It starts multiplying. 4, 16, 256. It just keeps growing exponentially. All the entanglements you could create and carry around with you. It's important to realize that you are creating them. It's an old habit. They seem to be automatically there, but as you sit down and observe the present moment, you begin to realize how much you're actually creating them, how much you put them together. So the first reminder is just to take them apart as much as you can. When you catch yourself putting things together like that, you just drop the whole project. There's a temptation to want to see a particular thought out to the end. It's like watching a TV show. You sit down for a few minutes, and all of a sudden you feel you've committed to the next half hour, even though you know that nothing earth-shaking, nothing really worthwhile is going to happen in the show. Usually the ending is pretty predictable, but for some reason you feel committed anyhow. It's the same with thought patterns in the mind. A thought pattern gets started, you start getting involved in it, and you feel you've got to see it all the way through. Well, you don't have to. After all, it's your choice. They're just constructs of the mind, so you can take them apart as you like. Get back simply to the sensation of the breathing, right here, right now. How does it feel when you breathe in? How does it feel when you breathe out? We have certain preconceived notions about where the breath comes in, how it comes in, how it goes out. But allow yourself to put those notions aside and explore just the actual sensation of breathing, the immediate sensation. If you allow your mind to open to different possibilities, you can ask, where does it actually feel like the energy starts? Where does it feel like the energy stops? How do you know when a breath is long enough? How you know when it's too long? How do you know when it's not long enough? Try to get in touch with these sensations in and of themselves. Give yourself something to explore. That's how you can maintain interest in the present. Don't think of it simply as tying the mind down with a leash to the breath. Give it a reason to want to stay, so that even though there is a leash on it, you don't feel constrained, because there's something interesting here. Getting in touch with the energy flow in your body, seeing how it actually feels in and of itself. This way, you can cut off thoughts of past, thoughts of future, because you're making the body in and of itself in the present your frame of reference. You don't look at the body in terms of how it fits into the world or how it fits into your worldview. Just simply the sensations in and of themselves, right here, without any other implications. You find, as you do that it's easier and easier to cut off distractions as you get more and more absorbed in exploring this process of breathing here in the present moment. When you breathe in, how does it feel in different parts of the body? Not just the nose, not just the chest. Explore the different parts of your body, and you begin to see that there are different sensations for the in-breath, different sensations for the out-breath, even in parts of the body you might not expect. This anchor of your physical sensations in the present moment is the only thing that's going to keep you from wandering off. Otherwise, the mind is like a balloon. If it doesn't have something to hold it down, it just floats where the wind will blow it, and who knows where it's going to come down. So use these present sensations as an anchor for developing seclusion, for taking the physical seclusion you've got here and adding mental seclusion on top. Now, when you leave here, you want to take that seclusion along with you. You go back to being entangled with other people, involved with other people, but you want to maintain this inner sense of seclusion. Learn to realize that physical entanglement doesn't need to mean mental entanglement. Carry the wilderness back with you into society. Because when there's entanglement, there's also going to be separation, and the Buddhas pointed this out many, many times. I will grow different, separate from all that is dear and appealing to me. How do we protect ourselves from the grief that can come from that? Well, as the Buddha said, you take yourself as your refuge. You take the Dhamma as your refuge. Dhamma here can mean not only the Buddha's teachings, but also Dhammas in the sense of mental qualities. Learn how to look at the events in the mind simply as that, simply as mental events in and of themselves. They come and they go. You watch the coming and you watch the going from this anchored position, being with the breath, being with the body. At some point in the practice, it's got to hit you. What kind of happiness are you going to find in these different mental states? They come and they go. They're just things that come can go. And the happiness that you create out of them? It's based on a very unstable foundation. So again, you want to strip things down to their basic elements. That's why you stay with body in and of itself, feelings in and of themselves, mind in and of itself, mental qualities in and of themselves, the events that come and go in the mind. Keep things at that level. Then, if you start building relationships outside, it's possible to have actual relationships with other people, but not to have your hopes for happiness dependent on those relationships. There must be something better than this. But you have to learn how to deconstruct all the constructs your mind creates around them. How do you do that? By looking at the mental states that come and go in the mind simply as that. Simply as mental states, without looking into their meaning, without getting involved in the story, the narrative. This has a solvent effect on a lot of the constructs we create. It helps us keep in mind the fact that they are constructs, and because they're constructed, they're going to come crashing down someday. So try to keep yourself as close as possible to the basic elements. Usually, the more you start constructing stories out of them, the more you start taking other things as your frame of reference, then the more you're setting yourself up for a fall. You have to start looking more and more closely at what are these basic elements that you're constructing things out of. You begin to realize that there's nothing at all that you could make out of them that could be lasting. It's like building a house out of frozen meat. It's hard enough to get the house constructed, but you'd realize that as soon as it reaches the heat of a normal day, the whole thing is going to collapse. It's at this point, the Buddha says, that you incline your mind to the deathless. You see that even staying as close as possible to the raw materials is no guarantee of true happiness either. It's a safer position than allowing yourself to construct all sorts of elaborate Rube Goldberg constructions, but still, it's not totally safe. Total safety comes with inclining the mind to the deathless, opening up to the deathless. That can happen only when you're really good at deconstructing things in the mind, keeping things at their most basic. Physical sensations in and of themselves, feelings in and of themselves, mind states, mental events in and of themselves. This is called taking the Dhamma as your refuge. You're taking the Dhammas of mental qualities as your refuge. In other words, keeping things in their deconstructed state as much as possible. There's refuge there, so that you don't get crushed by them, as would happen if you tried to create all kinds of fancy domes and arches and 7-story buildings out of them. If the bricks are on the ground, they're not going to fall on you. And when you see it clearly that they are just bricks, you say, there must be something better than this. That's what opens you up to your true refuge that can sense the Dhamma, here meaning Nibbana, the deathless, the unconditioned. That's the ultimate refuge. So the Buddha's greeting when you begin to meditate is to stay with the 4 frames of reference. When you leave, when you part, again, the instruction is to stay with the 4 frames of reference. That's your safety. That's your protection as you go through the world. In other words, you don't take the world as your frame of reference. You stay on this level as much as you can. That, he says, is an island. The word island here is part of a much larger simile where he talks about the floods in the mind, the floods of sensuality, the floods of views, the floods of states of becoming, of ignorance. These things come flowing out of the mind, and if you don't have an island, you drown. It's by staying with these 4 frames of reference that you create an island for yourself that the floodwaters will not overcome. Keep this in mind as you come and as you go. This is the way you take the seclusion of the monastery and carry it back with you into the world. In other words, you take the causes for seclusion, the skills that help create that sense of inner seclusion. That's what you can take back with you. You can't take the atmosphere or the outer seclusion of the monastery, but you can take these skills that create inner seclusion, which is the most important type of seclusion there is.